So let me first start off by saying these last 2 months have been the craziest months that I have ever seen in real estate, and that's including the 2 years of COVID where the market was going insane. There's different news articles every single day. It seems like the market is shifting on a daily basis, and understandably, this leaves a lot of people wondering what is fact and what is fiction. When new headlines are coming out on a daily basis that seem to be contradicting each other, it makes it very confusing for consumers to really understand what's happening in the housing market. So I think that's the perfect opportunity and perfect lead-in to what we're going to talk about today, which is October's housing market forecast. So things are getting spooky. There's a lot of fear out there right now, and as good investors know, when there's fear and uncertainty in the marketplace, that's often where the best deals are going to be found. Hi, I'm Josh Alexander, and your host of Orange County Housing Market News, your one-stop shop for all things Orange County real estate. So on today's episode, like I said, we're going to be going over my October housing market forecast for Orange County, and we're going to be talking about what's been happening in the housing market and what you should expect going forward over these next couple weeks. So let's go ahead and get into it. So like I do with all these monthly episodes, first we're going to go over what the current market has been doing, then we're going to go over, based on that, what to expect over the next couple weeks and months, and then I'm going to go over my advice for both buyers and sellers on how to handle today's market. And if you stay tuned and watch this to the very end, I'm going to give you a tip that you probably haven't heard of for both buyers and sellers. So on the buying side, how to get an interest rate that we've seen over the last 24 months and is not anywhere near as high as it is today. And on the selling side, how to make your home stand out by using some creative financing with buyers that are looking to purchase it. So make sure you stay tuned for that. So let's first go over what the market has been doing. So on the supply side of things, the active inventory peaked in the housing market in Orange County in the summer and has been steadily going down ever since. Right now, we're sitting around 3,600 homes, and to give that some context, that's about 80% less homes than we typically have on the market during this time of year if you exclude the years of COVID. Now on the demand side, obviously the biggest story right now is interest rates, which we'll get to in a little bit, but the interest rates have been cratering demand. So demand has been going down week by week as well and continues to drop as we head towards the holiday season. So all of this is leading to an average days on market of about 62 days in Orange County, which is still technically a slight seller's market. However, even though it is a slight seller's market right now, it's starting to feel, especially on the buyer side, like it's more of a balanced market. When you go out and place offers, often you're only competing with 1 to 2 other offers at most. Typically, you might be the only offer on the home right now. So even though we are still technically in a slight seller's market, we can see that this drastic change in interest rates has really started to impact the market, lining it up more in favor to the buyer right now. And one other data point I want you to look at, and that'll show up here, that kind of shows us that we're more in a balanced market than anything right now, is how many sellers are having to do price reductions on their homes. So if you check this out up here, if you're watching this on video, you can see that I'm basically scrolling through all the active inventory on the market right now, from around the $800,000 range up to the $1.5 million range, which is typically where the majority of the demand lies right now for Orange County. And you can see all of these red arrows that you see up there means they've done price reductions. So I don't have the exact numbers yet because they haven't been crunched for September, but based on looking up here, you can see that probably 50% of all homeowners active on the market right now are having to do price reductions. And this is most likely going to lead to the first time since the beginning of this pandemic where we're gonna see the average home sold for less than the asking price. So when we were in the middle of the pandemic, when the housing market was going crazy, typically you were seeing the average home sell for 3 to 6% above the asking price. These last 2 months, it's been selling at the asking price. And again, most likely when the September numbers are crunched, you're going to see that number go below 100%, meaning that more homes than not are going to be selling less than the asking price. So with demand so low and affordability so low, it's only a matter of time before we see a giant housing market crash, right? Well, unfortunately, that is still not in the cards anytime soon. And the reason why is that even though demand is historically low right now, supply is just as low, which means that that historically low demand is being met with that historically low supply. And it's actually helped stabilize the market where you're not seeing huge price increases or price decreases at the same time. Yes, there are some homes out there that are selling below market value, but there are still homes that are selling at market value as well, and even some that are selling slightly above market value, depending on the price range, the condition, and where it's at. Now, even though a housing crash where you see prices drop 20, 30% is really not in the cards anytime soon, or any data showing that right now, there is a good chance that if interest rates remain around the 7% rate for the long term, you will see demand start to go down faster than supply, creating conditions where you do see a slight buyer's market. Now again, a slight buyer's market doesn't mean a housing crash. It doesn't mean you're going to see prices all of a sudden tank by 20 or 30% by the beginning of next year, but there is a chance that you are going to see prices start coming down by 1% or 2% if these interest rates don't start going down. So really the biggest determining factor of what the housing market is going to do over the next couple weeks and couple months is going to have everything to do with interest rates. And unfortunately, over the last 2 months, interest rates have been the least predictable that we have ever seen. They'll be down by 0.5% one week, in a couple weeks span, they're up by another 0.75%, then they fall by 0.5%. It's causing a market where, one, on the selling side of things, sellers don't want to move out of their house. They have an extremely low interest rate, and when these rates have shot up so fast at such a quick pace, it really doesn't make sense for a lot of sellers to move right now, because even if they move into a lower cost home, they're going to be paying more money on their mortgage because they're going from a 2 or 3% interest rate to a 6 or 7% interest rate. So just that alone is keeping the inventory low. On top of that, seasonally, inventory always goes down this time of year, especially as we get to mid-November. So right now, there is no indication that trend's going to change anytime soon. Inventory is going to continue to go down. The more interest rates go up, the more sellers don't want to sell at this point, and you're going to see inventory continue to spiral downwards. So really there's no data out there right now that is saying that inventory is going to go up anytime soon. Now on the demand side, in terms of interest rates, obviously as interest rates stay high, demand's going to remain low. And just like supply, during this time of year, demand typically is going down anyway. And again, right in the middle of November, you're going to see that demand start dropping more significantly as we head into the holiday season. And so if interest rates remain high, you're going to see both supply and demand continue that downward trend. And really, you're not going to see much change in the housing market, except for a lot less transactions, because again, that low supply is going to be met with low demand. So the chances of anything changing significantly over the next couple months is going to be relatively low. So through all of this uncertainty and all of this fear in the marketplace, what is my advice for both buyers and sellers? So let's go ahead and start on the buying side first. So buyers, right now, interest rates are the highest they've been in 20 years. Home prices are the highest they've ever been, and affordability is at all-time lows. So unfortunately, for some buyers, it just doesn't make sense to purchase a home right now. Financially, you have to be in a place to be able to afford those higher monthly payments to even consider that option. Now, the only way you are going to be able to find out if financially you are able to afford it now is to speak to a lender. It's going to be the easiest way. It's free. You give them some information about your financial history, and they're going to give you an idea of how much home you can afford, what the payments are going to be. You can take that number, go back, look at your finances, and see if that monthly payment makes sense. If it doesn't, then unfortunately, you're going to have to sit on the sidelines for a while. However, for those home buyers where that payment still makes sense, it's not going to make you house poor where your entire monthly paycheck is going to the house, then now is a good opportunity for you to take advantage of the market. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, there is a lot of fear, there's a lot of uncertainty in the housing market right now, and that's often where the best opportunities are going to lie. So if you can afford a home right now, you can go out, place an offer on a home. Typically, you might be the only offer that that seller gets. Maybe they get one or maybe two other buyers to compete with, but right now, often you are the only offer out there, which means that when you're placing offers and you find the right seller, you might be able to place an offer under the asking price, ask the seller to pay to buy down your rate so you can get a lower interest rate, which is going to lower your monthly mortgage payments, and you can ask for repairs. You're going to be able to have your standard contingencies, so you have time to go inspect the house, have time to get it appraised, make sure your loan's going to go through. All these things were unthinkable just 6 months ago, but are now back on the table for you. So if you're able to go out and find a house, if you find the right seller that needs to sell their home and is motivated, you might be able to score a great deal on a house, get into a home below market value, and have everything in the contract line up in your favor. Now, that being said, if you are buying a home in today's environment, First, before you even start placing offers, you really need to sit down and make sure financially it's going to make sense for you and you're not going to be spending all of your money on your mortgage payment. You're going to be able to financially afford it without stressing you and your family out. So that's really the biggest determining factor of when is the right time to buy a home, and that's even more true today. So you need to sit down, find out not only what you can afford, but what you're willing to be able to spend on your mortgage every month to make sure it works out financially for you. And you can't just hope and pray that interest rates are going to go down. Yes, we're at highs that we haven't seen in 20 years, so the chances of them going down in the next couple years where you can refinance are quite high right now, but you don't want to get yourself into trouble. You need to be able to afford the mortgage payment long term that you currently qualify for today. And if interest rates go down later on, then that's just a cherry on top and you're able to reduce your monthly mortgage payment. But that way you can get into a house today, start paying down that principal, start paying down that interest, get the tax advantages, and get your family into a house. Another thing that buyers are going to have to pay attention to before placing offers right now is what are the current interest rates doing? They have been swinging so wildly recently that one week you might be able to afford that $1 million home, but the next week you can no longer afford it. So before you place an offer, every single time you need to talk to your lender, figure out what the current rates are, figure out what your current mortgage payment would look like before you submit that offer, because you don't want to get into a situation where you fall in love with the house, submit the offer, thinking that you can afford the mortgage payment, and then the lender gets back to you 2 or 3 days later saying, hey, interest rates went up by a full % since we pre-approved you, so you can no longer afford this home. And unfortunately, in today's marketplace, that is not out of the realms of possibility. Like I said earlier in this episode, interest rates went up by a full % in just a month alone, so you have to make sure that you're talking to your lender every single time right before you place an offer so you know financially what you are committing to by placing an offer and getting into escrow. Now, the last thing for buyers that I want to touch on is that we are not in some crazy buyer's market where you can go out and throw out offers $100,000 below asking price and ask the seller to pay for all your repairs. It's not that type of market. So you have to have the proper expectations when you're going into escrow and understanding that yes, the seller wants to sell their home. However, we're not in a marketplace right now where you're the only offer they're going to get for 6 months. Often, if they had to put their house back on the market, within a couple weeks, they'll most likely have another offer on the property. So even though you do have an advantage right now compared to what you've seen over the last couple years, you have to temper down your expectations and make sure you understand what the current market is doing. If you don't have those proper expectations, you could be setting yourself up for failure because you could be submitting offers way below what the seller will even consider looking at. They could get offended and not even get back to you and take your offer seriously. So you need to still understand what the actual housing market is doing. And yes, you have a slight advantage in some cases, but you're going to have to pick and choose depending on how motivated the seller is. Now, is it a possibility that you find that right seller that is very motivated to get their house sold and they might take a deep discount to get it sold because they have to move out of the state and they're on a timeline? Yes, but that's always the case in any housing market. There's always sellers that are willing to compromise depending on how motivated they are. So you have to understand that you might be able to find one of those sellers, and if you're willing to wait and continue to place offers to find a seller that's more motivated than others, then that's a strategy that you and your agent can talk about. But again, you just need to make sure you have a realistic expectation of where the current market stands so you're not setting yourself up for disappointment. So now let's go ahead and look on the selling side of things. So if you're thinking of selling your home over the next couple months, the things that you need to be paying attention to is one, you have to understand that there's going to be a lot of volatility in the market right now due to the different changes in interest rates. One week, interest rates might be lower, you get a bunch of traffic in your house. The next week, they go back up again and you have crickets. Next week, they might go back down again and you have more traffic in your home. The next week, they go back up, you have a lot less showings. So there's going to be that type of market fluctuation with buyers because interest rates are swinging all over the place. And until we see some type of stabilization, you have to expect that going in when you're trying to sell your home, because buyers are not only looking at the comparable sales right now, they're also looking at what the interest rate is before they start placing offers on homes. The next thing you need to expect as a seller in today's market, that if you do put your house on the market, you have to assume there's going to be a large chunk of buyers that are going to put into the offer asking you to pay down their mortgage interest rate so they can actually afford the home. That could be anywhere from $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. but that's something that is no longer uncommon to see when buyers are submitting offers on home to try to help counteract the interest rates so they can still afford the property they're trying to purchase. The next thing that you need to expect as a seller in today's market that you haven't had to expect over the last 2 years is appraisers are now saying that we are in a stable market and the market is no longer going up. So when they're going through and doing their appraisals, if a home sold next to you, model match, same condition for $1 million, they're no longer going to slightly go above that for what your home's value is. They're probably going to stay right at that $1 million mark. Most appraisers are no longer going slightly above what that last sales price is when they're giving an appraisal. So you need to expect that when you're getting into escrow and when you get that appraisal done, that if you do get a couple offers, you end up going into escrow over market value, there is a chance that appraisal is going to come back low and you're going to have to take care of that if you haven't already negotiated that in the contract. And finally, my last but probably most important advice for sellers right now, and I've been saying this for a few months, but it's becoming more and more important every single month at this point, is you need to make sure that you're hiring a professional real estate agent. Having someone go through, take a few cell phone photos, popping it on the MLS and expecting it to sell under a week, like it has been able to do over the last 2 years, is just no longer the case anymore. If they're going through and even just doing professional photos, you're going to have a hard time getting the right buyer for your house and getting your house into escrow quickly. When you're interviewing agents, you need to go over and look at two things when it comes to marketing. What marketing material are they making and how are they getting that marketing material out to potential buyers? So on the marketing material side, they should be not only having those professional photos taken, but professional videos, 3D walkthroughs, Matterport scan, a floor plan of your home. You want to make sure that the buyer is able to see your house anytime they want to, even if they can't make it to the property, because the more eyeballs on your house, the better chance you're going to be able to get a great offer on your home. Now on the marketing distribution side, which is just as important, if not more important, you need to be able to find an agent that is going to be able to distribute it to every single channel possible that a buyer might be able to find your property. So they should be going through and flyering your entire neighborhood, because often neighbors will be able to refer family and friends they want to live next to them to go purchase your house. So they should be flying your neighborhood. They should be going through doing Google ads, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, TikTok ads, all of those social media platforms. They should be doing reverse prospecting, which what that basically means is that we're able to find agents that are working with buyers that might match that type of property you're trying to sell and emailing them and letting them know your property is available. That way your property doesn't get lost in the noise when all these properties are coming up to the market. It's going straight to the inbox of the agent so they know their buyer might be possibly interested in that property. And I know this might sound trivial, but they should also be using QR codes on all of their marketing material, because oftentimes people get those flyers and they end up going straight into the trash. However, I've found personally, if you put QR codes on a lot of these type of flyers, you're going to have buyers scan them, get more information, figure out how to set up a private showing, and oftentimes get more buyers into the property than if you were just to do a flyer with the property information and the agent's basic contact information. So the agent needs to be able to use the current trends and technology to get out to as many channels as possible to try to expose your property to as many qualified buyers as humanly possible, so it gives you, the seller, the best opportunity to not only get into escrow quickly, but for a great price as well. Now, if you want to see how I go through and use all these different channels and marketing material to make sure sellers are getting the best price possible for the home, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can check out the link right up here where I go over it in more details. If you're not watching it on YouTube, I'll put a link in my bio or in the show notes below. That way you can check it out as well and kind of understand the process that I go through to help sellers get the best price and sell their home as quick as possible. Okay, and finally, if you stuck around this long, I appreciate it. I know there's a lot of data in here, but hopefully you have a better understanding of what the market currently looks like, as well as what you should be looking at as both a buyer and a seller right now in today's market, so you have a better picture of what to expect. So again, thank you for sticking around this long. So let's go over that tip that I talked about that's going to help both buyers and sellers, and it's called assuming the seller's loan. So what this basically means is the buyer is taking over the seller's current loan on the property. So let's go over why this is a pro for both buyers and sellers and how you should be utilizing it in today's market. So let's go ahead and start with the seller side first. So on the seller side, if you currently have a loan, especially if it's an FHA or VA loan, oftentimes you can actually transfer the remaining balance of that loan to a new buyer. So let's go ahead and say, as a seller, you're selling that home for $700,000 and you have an FHA loan on it for $600,000. So you have about $100,000 of equity built into the home. Well, you can actually go through a process with the lender to have the buyer qualify to take over that loan that you might have at 3 or 4%. And that's going to be extremely beneficial to buyers when interest rates are close to 7% right now, because it means they can afford a much bigger and better home than they could have using any other means. So you can have the buyer qualify with your lender to see if they can take over that loan. And what the buyer is going to have to do is they're going to have to bring in the difference between the loan and the selling price, which in this case would be about $100,000. So often buyers do have to have a sizable down payment, but if they have saved up and have that down payment but just are having a hard time affording the monthly mortgage payment, this could be a great opportunity to bring both of you together. You're able to get more interest on your home because more buyers can afford your house than any other house in the neighborhood. And buyers are going to be able to want to look at your home more because you're going to be able to get into that home at a much lower price, at a much lower interest rate, which means that's probably the best type of home that they're going to be able to afford, which again makes it extremely attractive to them. So if you are thinking of selling your home in the next couple months or even next year, it's a good idea to talk to your lender and figure out if your loan is assumable, if you can transfer it to a new party and have them take it over. If so, that's something that you and your agent should be advertising on everything, because obviously it's a giant competitive advantage when it comes to everybody else on the market. Now, on the buying side of things, this is obviously not going to work for every buyer out there, and you typically are going to need a sizable down payment because you have to basically make up whatever equity the seller has in the property. But if you have enough for the down payment and you've saved up that chunk of money, or if you're selling your house and you'll have a chunk of money saved up, and you can take over that loan, and now you can actually afford the monthly payments because the interest rate's much lower. This is a perfect opportunity for you to get into a house that you might not have been able to afford at today's 6.5%, 7% rates, but you could afford if you're taking over someone's loan that's at 3.5% or 4.5%. So this is something that, again, not all sellers are going to be able to use, but it's something worth asking and figuring out when you're placing offers, because if you can use this, it's going to benefit you significantly and save you a lot of money. So as a buyer, you still obviously have to go and qualify for that loan to take it over. So you have to make sure that you can actually financially afford to take over that loan. But if so, it is going to be a great opportunity for you. If you do have any additional questions, either about stuff we talked about today or something that I didn't discuss that you have a personal question about, feel free to DM me, contact me. All my information should be in the links below in my bio. Feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to help you out. So until next time, stay healthy, stay happy, and I'll see you on next week's show. Bye.